All right. We are back. Another episode of Haven of Horror, and we have the Canadian Ghost. I haven't made
What's
that
up,
joke in a
everybody?
while. And of course, Milton and Subject. We're doing something a little different. We had a bunch of like 2021 movies planned, but fortunately, the late, great Richard Donner passed away.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. And Austin suggested let's do The Omen. But if you're new here, we do 2 movies every week, so we needed a movie to pair with it. So we're doing The Exorcist. And I really wish I'd watched these maybe a little spaced out. But before then, as always, we have some news to go over. And Austin, I'm gonna just kind of pick on you a little bit because you haven't been here in a while. What are your thoughts on the Chucky show coming out this October?
Well, I don't know much about it, but I think it could be cool. That thing that maybe doesn't justify being a show, like just like the whole slasher idea. I feel like it could feel drawn out depending on how it's done. But it could be really cool. It just depends on how it is.
You should watch that show Slasher on Netflix. It's each season is like a slasher story, kind of like American Horror Story, but for
Oh, okay.
slashers.
Oh,
And
cool.
they get away with some shit because it's on Netflix.
Oh yeah, but they'll get canceled after 3 seasons.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to mention briefly, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but apparently Clive Barker's original Hellraiser 3 pitch is what eventually evolved into Brendan Fraser's Mummy movie. I think we might need to go into a little detail there because I think Austin's mind just broke.
It did.
Right, this is gonna be
Was
really hard for me
Hellraiser
doing
3
it.
supposed to be Indiana Jones in the quest for the puzzle box of doom? Like,
So, okay. At least I assumed it was the Brendan Fraser Mummy. I pulled up the article here. Apparently Clive Barker was going to make a Mummy film. Barker's hired. Yeah, he wrote a script with Garris that in pure Barker fashion. That would have been in its much more own bizarre, metaphysical, and psychosexual thing than any kind of straightforward remake of the original. That's what I want to see in a Mummy movie. Okay. Let's see here.
yeah, because they rip the genitals out through the nose.
Okay, so apparently one of the original ideas was that a Hellraiser movie would be set partly in ancient Egypt and would reveal that the very first Cenobite was an overly curious pharaoh. Yeah, so basically, I guess it's more talking about what his mummy movie would have been, but because that doesn't exist, they used like the Brandon Fraser mummy like artwork. So I just assumed it was.
Oh,
And Austin, the news link is in the newsroom. You check our Discord more. No.
no, check it.
Yeah,
See
I know.
what other news we get.
Yeah, not a lot this week. I don't know if because you weren't here, I don't know if you looked at it. But the original Day of the Dead cast is reuniting for Night of the Living Dead 2.
Oh, weird.
Not the directorial portion, just the main cast, the actors
Yeah.
and actresses.
Are you
No, of
excited for
course.
Night of the Living Dead 2?
No. Do we know who's directing it?
We did at one point.
Yeah.
Is it
I
McG?
clicked on the yes.
Maybe
Let me pull the
Bradley?
article back up here.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
apparently the director of this movie is Marcus Slabine, who directed The Dark Offerings, and I don't know what that is, but apparently it's going to be set on an island. Okay. My guess is they're going to call this Night of the Living Dead
Island.
Well, so my guess is they're going to be calling this Night of the Living Dead 2, but play it like a sequel to Day of the Dead, because if you remember the end of Day of the Dead, they're on that like island.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be
They're
really
just
strange.
taking the title of the one that's more recognizable.
No, about
And the one that's in public domain.
How about second Night of the Living Dead or something? If they're just going to go on the theme of stuff.
You expect them to be creative. I mean, like, I'm not expecting that much from this
Or
project.
Dusk of the Living Dead, Twilight of the Living Dead.
Well, it's funny because those Dusk and Twilight for a long time were like the rumored titles of Land of the Dead. Because we thought he would just keep with the theme.
No, but he went with my favorite type of day,
Land.
land.
All right, so we're just gonna hop into it. Austin, we've been doing these just kind of in release order, because I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Makes
These are
more
from the
sense for
70s.
here, yeah.
So I'm gonna let you talk about The Exorcist. So talk about
Perfect,
The
because
Exorcist.
I had my description for The Exorcist thought out. So The Exorcist is about a actress whose daughter gets possessed and she needs the help of Rocky Balboa, who is a priest, and he comes in and investigates. And that is The Exorcist.
Rocky Balboa.
He does kind of look like that, doesn't he? But
Yeah, and he's a boxer and he's got the gray jumpsuit and he runs in it.
and
You
it's
think The Exorcist was inspired by Rocky?
just the moment he goes up those stairs and gets to the final step, he's ready to just box a demon out of the
Yeah,
girl.
exactly. Exactly. And that's why you get like the end where he's punching her out.
And that was the inspiration for Rocky 4.
Exactly. Exactly. He
Don't you
ended the
remember?
demons and the Cold War all at once.
Don't you remember the demon saying, "I must break you," from a little girl's mouth?
Your mother is being broken in hell.
So this is my first viewing. Milton, had you seen this one before? I know you saw one of these before.
Yeah, so I saw The Exorcist way back when. I watched it for film class, one of my film classes in college, and just discussed the themes, process, and whatnot. Also discussed a little bit its relation to the source material, the novel that it's based off of. It's kind of plays fast and loose with some of it, but for the most part, it's a pretty decent adaptation.
That's
Besides
interesting
just being
because
a
it's
good
the
movie.
same writer, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Spooky possessed girls scare me. Uh but yeah, so I guess then this is an odd one out because I'm the only one here who hadn't seen this before. Um I was talking to Austin a little bit while I was watching it, just because it helps my mind if I'm doing at least two things at once. I don't know why, but I'm just nuts like that. Um I didn't know what to expect from this movie, and we're late because I didn't realize it was 2 hours long. I thought it was like 90 minutes. So it's like, oh, I've got time. And then I looked at the runtime. I was
No.
like, shit.
Nope.
Both of these movies are like 2 hours long. So I had always assumed that this was just kind of like we start at the possession and then it's kind of like a spiral from there. But no, like I would say what, like the first half of this movie is just build up.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Very impressive performances from everyone. Linda Blair does an amazing job at not only being the little girl, but being the demon, at least physically. Did they like distort her voice, or is that someone else?
That's someone
It's
else's
just
voice.
dubbed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
No, that
just
was the era of dubbing.
it's pretty good dubbing. I mean, that or they shot it well enough that you can't tell that it's not synced up probably 100%. Um
hmm Yeah,
Very
no, it's very good.
70s in its style.
But it's meant to look disturbing, which is effective considering the techniques were not very clean back then. So a lot of
Oh
stuff
dude,
works
I've
hand in
winced a
hand.
couple of times.
Good that that was the desired effect.
Oh no, yeah. I guess I'll just say up front, I adored this movie. I will
Oh,
definitely watch this again.
oh yeah,
Um,
loved it back then, still love it now.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get to see it in the theater, or not theater, the drive-in last year, and it was awesome.
We have established you were younger than us, right?
hmm
Okay, because when you said it's like said it, I saw it in theaters. It's like, wait, how old is Austin?
No,
Is he
last year
actually a ghost that just died a long time ago?
I'm Pazuzu.
oh,
But
um,
no, that's cool. Yeah.
I liked the mom quite a bit as well. And then that other woman that was with her, is that just like one of her maids? Oh, okay.
Yeah, just like a helper at the house.
Yeah.
Um, I also
Just
didn't
like
realize she was an actress at first. Because like they're shooting that thing at the school, and I was like, is this a commercial or like supposed to be a movie in the movie, like, but it makes it clear enough as we go on that she's famous.
Yep.
Yeah, and the director is a big part of the movie.
Yes, that was played by Jack McGowan. This was his final film role before he died.
Oh, he went out on a high note.
The
Yeah.
director, like the director character, Burke?
Yep. Yep.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think, like, he doesn't seem that old.
His death was in 1973.
How old
Wait,
was he?
wait, no.
Right?
Yeah, 1973. He was 54 years old.
Oh, so yeah, he wasn't that old.
It
Mhm.
said he died from influenza after complications resulting in the recent London flu epidemic at the time.
Damn,
Crazy.
that's a shame.
Yeah.
I really liked the pastor, the preacher character, and I would say he's the one that gets most closely to a traditional arc in this movie. Because he kind of starts out, the skeptic, and this movie is about, I guess, believing in a higher power, at least for him. What do you think, Austin?
Well, I think it's interesting. So the copy I have of this movie is like this big anniversary set, and it's got, both cuts, and it comes with a little snippet of, I think it's William Friedberg's autobiography. Yes. And at the beginning of the movie, it plays like a 2-minute kind of introduction from him, and he talks about how um, like the film kind of works in a way that if you come in being more cynical, you'll walk away getting that from the movie. But if you come in more optimistic, that's how you kind of see the movie's ending. And I thought that was really interesting because I can see where he was coming from with that, because it's easy to look at it and be like, like our big hero character, dies by the end, and then there's also the look of, well, good triumphed over evil, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly at a cost.
So I guess I'm
Mhm.
looking at it more of
Exactly.
from an optimistic route, because at least my takeaway was that he sacrificed himself to save this girl. So even though he died, he still did some good because the
Mhm.
demon is no longer in Regan.
Reagan,
Reagan.
yeah.
Reagan?
Yep.
Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
Man.
So I've actually been excited to talk about this with other people for a while. When I discussed it in film class, there was an idea put around by myself that even gave
To
my
put several
professor.
superpowered people together.
No, several
Uh,
possessed people.
Oh, the Conjuring cinematic universe.
but
Exactly.
there was an idea that the film and novel in some ways have this theme in some ways of the older generation of the church not necessarily properly preparing the next generation in some ways, like that of a theme where like the old sins of like certain people kind of hold them back in some ways. um of course we recognize that the older priest is like an addiction to like some sort of drug that we established early on in the film, and that he still has this addiction, and that's or at least it's alluded that this is what causes his death at the end because of medical complications. And we
Mhm.
also have the main priest's skepticism and his own personal doubt and guilt with the dealing of his mother and how that goes into that. um, it's not just the process in of itself, that exorcism that is supposed to save the girl, it's actual faith that goes into it, and the two have some old sense that they're being held back, and the fact that they won't exactly um, commit to confronting that sort of like darkness inside of themselves. In a way, how can they be able to, if they can't exorcise this demon from the girl? um, it's in some ways it's alluding to the fact that they can't exorcise their own sins out of themselves either. They can't do this of their own power. It's not until Damien actually is able to make a sacrifice that he's actually able to save someone else. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna comment too heavily on, I guess, the spiritual more ideas in this movie because that's way outside of my wheelhouse.
You can always ask me about it.
Milton, of course, is be more than welcome that the input from that certain point of view. But just as a story, I thought it was interesting that the church had kind of moved past uh exorcisms as a like practice. Um they kind of mixed, like science where, oh, demons aren't really possessing people, people just think they're possessed. Which I
Hmm.
guess is somewhat of a skeptic myself. I, appreciated that it's not just immediately, oh, there's a demon, we have to go get it out of her. And I think there's an interesting debate to be made about combining religion and medicine or keeping them separate.
Yeah, there's definitely some sections, some Christian or pseudo-Christian sects that believe in only the idea of we must only use prayer, and that is the only way that things can be cured. And it's like, no, that's not even what the Bible says. But
Mhm.
there's like age-old and like mysticism that's in like certain heretical sections. There's definitely something where like the church definitely has to be a bit more open to the idea of, yeah, if someone's sick, give them actual medicine, uh, that sort of thing. But I do appreciate in some ways that there's an actual metaphysical threat in this movie, because I think it adds to the tension. And the fact that there is actually a demon possessing this girl definitely adds some more, discussion of themes and whatnot, rather than it just being like something that's self-made for Reagan.
So,
Hmm.
Austin, I know you're more leaning towards where I am on the whole religion, spirituality aspect, at least in real life. What is kind of your read on this movie's thoughts on religion?
Well, I think one thing I appreciate about this movie, from what I understand, is that you have the writer, William Peter Blatty, I think his name is, who is more religious, and then you have the director, William Friedkin, who isn't. And I think that kind of balance between them is really felt throughout the film. Especially, I think one of the strongest things is that it's not just like, oh, your daughter's possessed, boom, let's religious answer. Like, he they go through every single thing that they can possibly do, and that is the last resort. And it's, yeah, maybe it'll act as a placebo effect. Like,
Yeah. And the mom does a really good job of just being this like, she's stressed. Her daughter is going through all these tests, which, as someone who had a parent who went through a lot of medical tests to try to, figure out something, what was wrong with him, that stuff's never easy to watch.
mhm,
Um, and I think the first time I squirmed a little bit is during the big test scene where they like are putting the needle in her throat. I've seen that done,
yeah,
something similar to that done in real life, and I was like, oh, ugh.
yeah, no, that scene's brutal.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like great work with practical effects in this movie. They use a whole full dummy for like the head rotation thing. I saw the director's cut, so I've seen. There was
Mhm.
also the whole thing where she kind of like spider walks a bit. Also the whole like crucifixion, like self-mutilation scene. There's that as well. Um, there's just a lot of great practical effects, and one of the reasons why I like practical effects over CGI sometimes.
And
although
not
I
not just that, but also just amazing makeup.
Yeah.
Although I do
Um,
have to ask, I don't know if this was just a thing in the 70s or if it's a medical thing, but like I don't know, I feel like she lost a lot of blood because they just kept like letting it spray out everywhere during that medical test. I was
Well,
like, you're getting blood everywhere. What are you doing?
true. We have to give some suspension disbelief, but that is fair.
mhm.
But it depends on how you look at it. I mean,
It
how
didn't
many
ruin the movie
pints
by
of blood?
far for me, but
Yeah,
it made me laugh.
but it is a good question. Like, how many pints of blood are in a human child, or something like that? Like 8 pints, or somewhere between 6 and 8 pints. I'm
Would be a
fairly sure.
lot, yeah.
Yeah.
A
The
lot
other
more
thing
than
I
just like,
was yeah, the other thing I was just thinking about during this movie is what The Conjuring wants to be really badly. Or something similar to this, but then they just make schlock.
well, I mean, this movie basically created an entire genre.
And the next movie we're talking about is one of those movies.
Hmm.
Um, Funnily enough,
Yeah.
also featuring a person named Damien,
Yep. Now,
but in a very different role.
Damien definitely has a popular name to it, and apparently, like a lot of people just didn't want to name their child Damien after, uh,
Ah, it
The
doesn't
Omen.
surprise me.
I think that name's still kind of synonymous with that. I still hear
Yeah.
that a lot.
Like Damien, Lucius, Lucian, and stuff like that that gives like some connotation of like Lightbringer or someone who has a name that just seems this guy's all right.
Oh God, Austin's ruined the word Lightbringer for me. Anyway, so back to this movie. I really like. I'm not normally one for slow burn horror. Austin can attest to this. I like the schlocky, like Evil Dead 2 or Friday the 13th. I thought this was perfectly paced. Never was I. Why are we still here? What's going on?
Yeah, it's slow in a different way. Like um it's not like, okay, we're giving you very much like the minutia detail, and then by like the third act this is where everything explodes. Like we're still doing stuff throughout, it's just we're not seeing it.
Mhm.
um
The Exorcist, written by George R. R. Martin.
yeah, like they leave a lot to the imagination for the first while, like things like Burke's death, and the desecration of the statue of Mary in the church. And if you're paying attention, like all of the details are there. Like even before then, like you see Reagan, for example, she's doing her clay stuff, and that's the stuff that she uses to desecrate that statue. Um, and even the famous head twist thing is her making fun of her killing Burke.
So
I, there,
I have. Why am I getting an echo? Okay, that was weird. I was getting an echo there for a second. So I have to ask, do you guys buy that Reagan is perfectly fine physically after all of this?
no, but I guess there's a whole thing about like spiritually like
Mhm.
inflicted wounds that I guess means as soon as the demon escapes, she's fine now. It's a whole
It,
movie effect thing of like once you're a zombie, for instance, and we can attest to this with the Day of the Dead remake. As soon as you're infected, you start looking like you're halfway into the
Oh
grave,
my
and as soon
god,
as
I
you're cured, you don't look that.
I never
You know,
told Austin about this. So Austin, in the sidetrack real quick, because we haven't really talked too much about some movies. Whoa.
sorry.
Extreme close up.
So Austin, in the remake of Day of the Dead, the moment you get infected, you instantly go from just a normal person to a half rotten corpse in like a second. It's amazing, but also terrible.
Oh my god.
But yeah, and like a lot of the stuff that happens during the movie, I think you could write off as, oh, she's recovering. But I mean, her head went all the way around. Like, I feel like that would leave some like issues, you know?
It probably would, but we can. I guess that what we have to accept from the movie is that this is the once the possessed body is no longer possessed, then the girl is fine, which is movie magic, I suppose. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's yeah.
I guess the thing is that maybe, because the demon can maybe twist it back, and it's what kind of keeps it alive. And then after that, like it kind of heals itself, like
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I'd almost like to imagine that Reagan, like as soon as she's not possessed, it's like, oh, and her head spins the other way back like a like a wind-up tool, and then she's fine again.
I
yeah, because when she loses the demon, you can see she still has like cuts on her legs and stuff.
Yep.
yeah. Um,
Uh,
I've seen, and I am admittedly, this is way outside of my wheelhouse. As anybody who knows me well knows, I hate possession movies. Because I think they're all typically the same thing, or just really boring.
well,
They're
that's
all
be
This
this, but
was,
they're all this but dumber.
yeah,
yeah, essentially. This is the first. This is the first like big one where it's a whole possession thing. This is the one
this
that
is
did
what
it
I've
well,
been looking for from this genre.
and you will probably never find it again, unfortunately.
I do want to
And
watch the show though, because I've heard the show was good.
I haven't seen it. I'd be up for watching it.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I want to comment on, and I think this actually helps the pacing. The sound design is fantastic in this
Hmm.
movie. And I think that helps a bit as well as some of the moving images. Like, despite the fact that a lot of stuff here is rather banal, the fact that we get quick cuts and like sometimes loud or absence of sound in many ways creates a moment of suspense, especially in the dream sequence where we have like almost no sound in certain portions except for ambience. Like the moment when like Reagan's scream comes in after the dream, it it's like small portions of like understanding the or the absence of something is that should be there. Then we finally get it, but it's way too loud. Creates almost uh, like a sense of dread and horror in some ways. It's another
Speaking
point.
of sound design, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
no problem.
Austin, there was a few sequences just of the soundtrack where I was getting kind of like Carpenter vibes, and it might just be me associating Carpenter with keyboard. But there's a few keyboard tracks in here. Did you have anything like that, or is that just you're just kind of used to that
Uh,
sound for this era of film?
I guess just kind of used to that sound. But the soundtrack in this film, the soundtrack in both of these films are wonderful.
Well,
And in very different ways.
the
Hmm.
music was done by a Jack Nitzsche or
I thought he
Nietzsche.
was gonna say Jack Nicholson.
No,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
well, that's
Jack
professionally known,
Nicholson.
but Bernard Alfred Nietzsche or something like that just had a lot of experience in that sort of thing,
Yeah,
and just music
Jack
in general
Nicholson.
with jazz. And I think his first thing was Village of the Giants, and from then on, just had a reputation for just this kind of weird sound, but it works really well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson woke up that morning. He slapped the hooker out of his bed, and he wrote the music to The Exorcist.
So I'm a the other way I'm kind of out of my wheelhouse here is I'm not a big 70s film expert. Most of my film I'm an 80s film, at least in horror guy. I'd like to go back and see more 70s films because obviously, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, this and Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, are all 70s masterpieces. I was a little surprised that they were able to keep some of the stuff in this movie in the movie. For
Yes,
73?
yeah, this was a very controversial movie for its time, even with all the stuff they
Oh,
kept
I've
in.
heard. I just can't believe a studio agreed to release this.
Uh,
And
yeah,
Austin, I think you
it's
know exactly what scene I'm talking about.
yeah. Warner Brothers of all people approved this movie.
How do
That's
you get that cross scene in this movie through Warner Brothers?
so
I'm gonna guess because it is the cross scene operates in the same way that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre does, which is you don't actually see anything, but you see enough that you can imagine the rest. Like, keep in mind, you just see cross goes up, cross goes down, cut back, crosses up. Like, you don't actually see anything there. So I'm gonna have to imagine it comes down to that, but that's what makes it like as horrifying. Like, it's the same thing as in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the big thing that people remember when he like impales the woman on the spike. You don't see anything. Like, it's he goes up, cuts, she's on the spike. Like, you don't actually see what's happening. That would be
Yeah,
my guess.
but
yeah,
then
we
right after that, you also get the kiss me mommy scene. That was, I think, an even bigger surprise than just the cross scene. I was like, what the fuck? How did they do this in the 70s?
but yeah, no, definitely like we it was still hard even with all this stuff to actually get things like properly, you know, viewed. There was a whole ratings controversy where this film could have been rated X, and it was highly debated on before like the ratings board finally settled on its R rating. But
That makes
yeah, even
sense.
then, like with video nasties in general, there were viewing restrictions in the United Kingdom, in which in the United Kingdom there was like a huge ban, a lot of what they called video nasties at the time, with a lot of grindhouse pictures and what. So this was still in the heyday of, a lot of these movies actually just being banned in a lot of countries. Actually, the
Now we're
U.S. was
making
just
movies about that era.
yeah,
When
yeah.
there was a lot of kind of hysteria in the theaters with people watching it too.
I imagine like this is a legitimately. I think even to this day, if you go into this blind like I did, other than the like iconic
Mm.
head turn and the pea
The
soup,
poster shot.
yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
no, but
if
yeah,
you go into
the
this just blind, you get to that cross scene, like that is still legitimately disturbing because like it's a twofold, right? You get the image of her doing that with the cross, but then you also get the kiss me mommy scene. And I'm not going to describe what that is because if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, go watch the movie, then come back.
no, this movie goes places that a lot of like movies at the time would not go to, which in some ways like helps generate some buzz because this movie doesn't pull its punches
No, it
with
does
it.
not.
Mhm.
But that is something that one can appreciate as a like, a film appreciator and
Uh,
viewer, seeing the lengths that they were willing to go at the time just to get the point across of, yeah, this is brutal, this is horrific.
and it should be noted as well. I think Austin and I both watched the theatrical cut. I think you mentioned you watched the director's cut.
Mm.
So yeah, well, this is my first time watching the theatrical. Before this, I'd only ever seen the director's cut, so
Did they
I'm
show the
familiar with both.
directors in the drive-in?
Yeah,
Oh, weird. I've never heard of that.
yeah, I assumed it would be theatrical, and then um, because I didn't know enough about the changes because I'd only seen the director's cut before then. But once I got to the spider walk scene, I was like, okay, this is the director's cut
And speaking
because
of
that's the big
direct,
change that everybody knows.
yeah, speaking of directors, three famous directors have like described this as their favorite movie of all time. And that would be Stanley Kubrick, Robert Eggers, and David Fincher, who all had their own viewers
Kubrick
and appreciation.
surprises me a little
Yeah.
bit. The other two don't.
And Martin
See, I
Scorsese
had the
said it was one of
opposite.
the 11 scariest horror movies of all time. But this film was a high inspiration for a lot of people, a lot of famous directors.
Say that again, Austin.
Said I had the opposite of you. Granted, I'm not as familiar with David Fincher. I need to watch more of his movies. But I can see like Eggers and Kubrick um, taking
Okay.
inspiration from this movie, or at
Well, I
least
just
them
mean
seeing it
that.
this high. Yeah.
Well, see, I just meant that like Eggers and Fincher. I don't know how old Fincher is, but like I assume they were young when that movie came out.
Yeah,
They
Fincher
probably
in his
saw it as like
yeah,
teenagers or young adults, and it left an impact on them. With
yeah,
Kubrick, I mean, by 73, he was already well into making movies, right?
yeah.
Hmm. I just
Fincher is 58. He probably would have been uh, 11 or 10 when that movie was released for the first time.
Yeah.
So,
So,
yeah.
like
I
with those two, it makes more sense because they would have grown up with it. Whereas Kubrick, I imagine more of his favorite movies would be the older, like maybe 40s or 50s.
that's fair. I think the only reason that didn't shock me is rewatching it this time. I got kind of that Shining eerie feel where I was like I'm getting some of that where I'm not scared because most horror films admittedly like don't really scare me. Like it's a different feeling when I think when you're into the genre. Um but it was that kind of like oof, like this is creepy. Like
It's intense. And I
yeah.
think part of that comes from the fact that I don't want to say, well, I guess in a way antagonist is a 12-year-old girl, but she's also the protagonist.
Mhm.
And Linda Blair does such a good job at making that character likable before shit goes down that you're like, oh God, what do you stop? Like, what are you doing?
Well, that's another thing that this movie is like basically created was the evil child cliche that you see a lot
Uh,
in horror films now, and it's still a shining example of like one of the best ones.
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I've seen a few, and it's usually just overly obvious. Oh, they're evil. Do you get it? They're evil. Like
Hmm.
we were talking about earlier. I haven't seen it yet, but we were talking about earlier the Orphan. Uh, I'd like to see that because the twist seems interesting, but it's like I don't know. She just looks evil. Like there's no like subtlety to it. With this one, it's like Reagan Whale.
Vegan, wait.
Uh, just looks like a normal girl, you know? And then she starts saying shit like the
Hmm.
very vulgar stuff and for this especially for 70s, you know?
Well, I mean, we also had like a huge like run of films beforehand in like the B movie genre. Some within the main public eye that this was like the beginning trend towards darker and more gorier movies.
Yeah, which is my
Hmm.
jam.
Yeah.
But the
So
only
I
other
know.
movie that I know of that Linda Blair is in I want to see because it's directed by the guy who did Friday 5 and apparently it's one of the most vulgar films Jay from Red Letter Media has ever seen.
For which movie?
I don't remember the name of the movie, but it's the
Oh.
only other movie I know that Linda Blair is in. Red Letter Media mentions it in their Friday the 13th review because it's directed by the guy who did Friday 5.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Also, slight retraction on the passing about the directors. It's one of their favorite films of all time. If anybody comes back to
I
say you
Yeah.
you said it's the absolute favorite, it's like okay, sorry, one of their favorite of all time, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, I don't think I've ever heard a director say this is the absolute like my favorite movie. Like nothing compares to this one. It's usually oh these are
Also,
my favorite
That's not
films.
true. Steven Spielberg has said that before,
Well, I mean, I said I've never heard, so I mean it was true
and
because I've never
Spielberg
heard him say
said
that.
his favorite film of all time is Little Nicky.
Oh,
and,
see,
uh,
Austin, this is why I
something
miss you
John loves
around
it too.
because you make a joke and Nick just looks at you like, "What?"
Yeah,
Like
I get that
that.
a lot.
Oh man.
Anyway,
But
yeah.
yeah, and I like how visceral the ending is too, because like it's just shot like real up close, and you just watch him like jump through the window, and the glass shattering is like most overpowering in the sound
No, it's
mix.
like deafening. Yeah.
And then you get the pastor who just happened to be there where the guy landed. Although maybe this is just the cynical part of me. I laughed a little bit at him rolling down the stairs.
So things about that. So that staircase is very real. That's not a set thing.
Hmm.
People who have gone there, and I can people I trust attest. No, that thing is a death trap. That is
That's
a
what I've
very,
always heard.
very,
Yeah.
very long staircase, and it is very steep. Yeah, people can absolutely die on that thing. It's that thing is not safe at all. But
Has anybody ever
Interesting.
had their head turned completely around though?
Why don't you try it on camera for us, Austin?
Well, it's not going all the way.
you can't do it with your hands. It's got to be just the head.
Okay. Yes.
I keep expecting to hear just a loud crack.
No, it's like that scene in like what was it, Dark Knight Returns or something like that, where like Joker just like cracks his head completely.
Yeah, it's Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, I mean part two, I think. But
Yeah.
Yeah, because all the Joker stuff is in part two.
Yeah, it's in issue 3. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's. I mean, there's a lot to say, I guess, about the stuff in the like talking about the movie and some of the themes of the movie. But overall, this is a very simple like premise and film, which we've said a lot on the show because the best horror usually is a simple story.
yeah,
Hmm.
Um, unless you're Saw, where then the complication is what makes it amazing because you have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, well, and this movie does a really good job because obviously I know horror has a uh, bit of a
Reputation.
stigma, yeah, reputation,
yeah,
and I think this movie does, like a lot of great horror does, um, where it kind of elevates that material and makes it more of a movie. Where like the characters and story on their own are really good too.
sure. And they spawn a lot of mediocre sequels in its
I mean,
movie history.
I've heard 3 is great, but I need to see it.
I need to
Well,
see that
Sword
as
3
well.
doesn't really have anything to do with an exorcism. They just slap that title on there.
Well, yeah, because 3 is William Peter Blatty adapting his other book, Legion.
Uh, but it's got Brad Dourif in it.
Hmm.
Chucky.
Oh, Yeah, Omen 3 has a Sam Neill.
I'm gonna watch that at some point. I know it's bad, but I'm gonna watch it. Like, I mean, it can't be any worse than Omen 4, which was made for TV. Like,
Canadian made for
Is it
TV movie.
the Omen holiday heist?
No,
so
it's called
Austin, I think I sent it to you, but that's the one about Damien's daughter, who is now the Antichrist.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
they call it Omen 4 The Awakening, starring Faye Grant, apparently.
And that famously inspired The Force Awakens.
Oh, I think we've covered a majority of The Exorcist, most of the stuff, but
Oh, we gotta
Austin,
talk about Max Van Sydow, who is awesome in this, and I think he's in elderly makeup the entire time, and he looks great.
is that the pastor?
Yep.
Okay, because so I rented this on Vudu, and I did not realize that he was in elderly makeup. However, I think there is a couple of shots towards the end where you can tell because he's like really, really unnaturally pale. But that might also just been the transfer I was watching.
Maybe, yeah. Well, and I know also, like
Sure.
famously, they made that set like really cold, like that is their breath coming out. I don't know if that maybe
Oh,
impacted that.
interesting.
Yeah, no, with their breath, that's because it is that cold.
Yeah.
No, but
Because
it's
we
been
talked a little bit, John and I, today about how much of a bastard William Friedkin was when making this.
Yeah, I
yeah.
was just about to say, I feel it's important to at least mention it because it is important, I think, to the making of this film. And Austin, you know quite a bit about this, so I'm gonna let you kind of take over for a minute and just talk about some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's very much that kind of I don't I you can't really say like old school Hollywood. It's more like a middle ground where we kind of got to a point where directors could kind of do whatever they wanted to get the best product. So William Friedkin would do things like he would carry a gun on the set and he would fire it off to like scare cast and crew. Linda Blair broke her back while making the movie because she was like in a harness. It's the scene where she's flailing around on the bed, and they like went way too hard on her, and it broke her back. Um, in the like "Kiss Me, Mommy" scene or whatever, the mom's like head goes flying into the wall. Like she was hooked up to a rope, and they yanked her, and like she really did smash her head off that wall. Like there was just a lot of craziness going on. It was
Yeah,
very much of that era.
yeah, a lot of people call this an exploitation film. This is one of the reasons why. Because freaking he didn't care. He just wanted to really bring out a
Do
lot of
do people call this an exploitation film? Because I don't really think
some
this is much of an exploitation film.
some do.
At the
It's
time, I'm sure that was probably thrown out a lot.
yeah,
I don't know about now, but
it's a bit nebulous in what ways to consider what is an exploitation film by today's standards or whatnot.
mhm.
At the time, it was lumped in a lot with, more what you consider to be more like grindhouse pictures and whatnot,
Well,
because
it's
the amount of
something that
gore and
offends me
violence.
quite a bit, which is ghost exploitation, which I am not a fan of.
Because he is the day ghost.
No,
Exactly.
demon exploitation or
Yeah,
spiritual exploitation.
I can see this being labeled exploitation in the 70s, but I think at this point it's not.
At this point, it's
Because
just classic
exploitation
cinema.
to me says, that's in the same like subgenre as something like Last House on the Left or
Like,
I Spit on Your
uh,
Grave,
or
which those are like, really trashy, like
Yeah, no, this film still, I mean, still, it's a topic of discussion to this day, labeled with the greatest horror film of all time label.
they're all wrong. It's Evil Dead 2.
There's a case for it though. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
it's one of them, and at the end of the day, it just comes down to personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, there is no such thing as the greatest horror film. It's like anything else, right? There's like, these are the five greatest, and it'll change depending on who you ask.
yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, as
All
long
in
as you
all,
don't say like Halloween 4, because then you're wrong.
Should we get to the
Yeah,
ratings?
if you say a sequel or a remake to a John Carpenter film and not the John Carpenter film, you're wrong.
I don't know, man. The remake of The Fog was something.
Look, I didn't like the original Fog to begin with anyway, so the remake didn't help matters either. So I don't know.
All right, so we're gonna start with Austin for final thoughts, and then if he doesn't have any, his score.
Calculating. There's a progress bar being filled.
We can see it too. I wish I was a better editor. I would just put like a progress bar.
um, I think the actress that plays the mom is wonderful. Her slowly breaking down over the film is like amazing. She's really good. Um, oh, what do you guys think of the like subliminal stuff? Like the famous Captain Howdy shot.
I thought it was well integrated, and if I had blinked, I would have missed it. But luckily, I didn't blink, and I don't know what that face was, but it was spooky.
Well, then, like Milton, you watch the director's cut, which has like
No,
a
it will have like subliminal flashes every so often, especially like the face of the actual demon Pazuzu. You'll sometimes see some glimpses of his like makeup and like skull face kind of thing, like in certain
Mhm,
things. Sometimes it even emanates off of Reagan sometimes, if you look
mhm.
closely enough.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is because you watch the director's cut, while John's only seen the theatrical. I've seen both. The director's cut has a lot more of it, and a lot of people say that it's kind of overused in the director's cut. Um, like, what did you
Um,
think about that?
I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's fine. I get more of what I like. Granted, perhaps maybe sometimes doing it less does have a desired effect of, you know, less is more sometimes. So I can
Mhm.
understand why some people may say it. I wasn't bothered. I think they did it a fair amount of times.
Yeah, I think some of the new additional like subliminal things are really cool. Like there's a shot where the mom is leaving Reagan's room and just you either see it or you don't. In the darkness of the room, there's the statue of Pazuzu that you see at the beginning in Iraq.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to watch this director's cut this Halloween, I think. So okay, so I guess last question before we'll move on to scores. And Austin, this is for you because, like I said, I'm going to pick on you today. But no, it's because you're the only one who's seen both cuts.
Hmm.
What is your preferred cut of this movie? It's the McG cut. No.
Um, gun to my head, maybe theatrical, like it's slightly tighter, just because it's cut shorter. They're both really good. Like it's watch both of them. Like not back to back,
Oh God, that would be terrible.
Just
but they're both really good. Like I don't think the director's cut really is a step above or below.
Okay, that's interesting.
my heart is closer to director's cut because I saw that first. So that's
That's
just where
fair.
my
Yeah.
tastes lie. Um,
Oh, I'm sorry, Milton.
theatrical
I
cut is
thought you'd
fine
only
though.
seen the director's
No,
cut.
no, I've seen both.
Okay.
But theatrical cut is good too. You can't really go wrong either way. If you really like this
Exactly.
movie, watch the director's cut. You'll get more footage.
Hmm.
I will watch that this October. I try to watch as many horror movies as I can in October, and I'm already kicking Austin's ass in 2021
You're
movies.
kissing Aston Zost.
I'm kicking Austin's ass in how many 2021 movies I've seen. So I'll take a break and let him try to catch up. I don't know when we started competing, but
It's a thing now. It's a thing
thing
now.
now. Um. So yeah, I'll go ahead and start with the scores. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5. It's one of the best horror movies ever made, and like it earned that reputation.
Mhm.
We'll start with Milton. He gives it 2 palms up.
Yes. No, I meant to do like 5 out of 5. It's great. Yeah, it deserves to be on the best list. Go.
All right, Austin.
4.5. No,
Oh.
5.
Been a while since we've had a unanimous 5 out of 5. I guess maybe
It's The
not because we had
Exorcist.
Shaun of Dead. Shaun of the Dead.
No, we've got some good movies every so often, so it's
Oh
yeah.
no, yeah, I'm keeping track of all of our 5 out of 5s.
All
All
right,
right,
we'll put this on the wall of best of the best.
so
This one gets a gold star by me.
And yep.
It
so
gets to go up on the fridge.
so the next movie, of course, is The Omen, directed by, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the late great Richard Donner. And I kind of wish I had either watched this first or separated them, because I don't know if my viewing of The Exorcist hurt my viewing of The Omen or what. But there was big chunks of this movie that I was kind of bored by. Um,
So for this viewing, I actually watched The Omen first before I watched The Exorcist. I still think The Exorcist is a better movie personally.
oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
there's no doubt in my mind.
It's
So
undeniable, yeah.
I'm gonna let Milton start us off with this one. I just wanted to give a little preamble.
I'm gonna get a
Okay.
drink while you're talking, but I'm gonna carry this with me. You're just gonna get a tour while I'm walking.
Oh, we're getting a Canadian tour for free.
I almost just don't want to talk while Lawson does this bit. All right, I'll describe it. So, yes, The Omen, which debuted in 1976, stars Gregory Peck as Gregory Peck. Gregory Peck becomes the ambassador from the United States to Great Britain. I should say the United Kingdom, actually, but
Oh, are we gonna
whatever.
get the Return of the Ice?
Yeah. Anyway, Gregory Peck is married. He adopts a child where it's kind of alluded that something isn't quite right. There's a few key events that eventually allude that something more and more that there's something odd about this child, as well as the things that happen around him. And eventually, he realizes, despite everything that he tries to deny and all the omens that come around,
I'm gonna try
that the
this.
child is actually the son of Satan.
Wait, you're drinking coffee creamer?
No, it's French vanilla.
And it's revealed that the day
That's
ghost
coffee
is
creamer,
actually
I
Damien
don't
from The
think it
Omen.
is.
dude.
Oh
Is
no, wait.
the
No, wait. No, I was just joking. That was a bit.
that
Oh
was
my god.
that was flow breaking. But anyway, so Gregory Peck like goes around the world to try to figure out what he should do about his son, his adopted son, Damien. There we go.
I'm sorry. I'm just. You almost drank coffee creamer?
No, that was the comedy bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
this is why I wonder I should have waited. But yeah, but
Yeah,
that
I'm
is
sorry. I didn't mean to
essentially
take
it.
your teeth
No,
out.
no, it's fine. But yeah, Gregory Peck puts in a great performance as usual because he's Gregory Peck and he can do no wrong. Um, we have our child actor who is okay, but you know, his performance is not supposed to be the thing that most people focus on. It's more of the concept of what he is, of being essentially a body possessed by the Antichrist, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Thankfully,
it's not.
Lee Remick is also a good actress for the wife of the ambassador. So yeah,
Yeah, the horror, unlike The Exorcist, isn't built around the kid. In The Omen. So unlike Linda Blair, where a lot of it has to rely on her physical performance, um, Damon is also almost kind of like a non-presence in this movie.
yeah, not until like certain sections where he. Well, I can't actually agree with that because he does have presence because he
Sorry,
has.
that's maybe a bit harsh.
Yeah, he's definitely not a strong actor, certainly. It's a child actor being
I guess more so
okay.
what I meant was like he is not the focus of the horror like Linda Blair was in The Exorcist. You get there's other stuff that you're more focused on, like you get stuff with the nanny, you get stuff with the dogs, and also a lot of it is Gregory Peck like
And
away
his
from the family
eyebrows.
and his eyebrows.
Take it on the Antichrist.
and kind of figuring out what's happening, as opposed to like if Linda Blair in The Exorcist doesn't work, then the horror in that movie doesn't work.
Yeah, I feel like because I actually would like it if they committed to that what you said fully. Unfortunately, and I wish it would have been in some other way. But Damien does cause his mother's accident and essentially throws her off the balcony, which I wish that would have been done in a different way because otherwise I would think it would be stronger if it's just stuff that happens around Damien rather than just, you know, Damien is actually directly involved in one scene. It's
Yeah, the
Like
stuff that
Son of a
was most
Jackal.
interesting to me in this movie was once we get Gregory Peck to Rome and he's like trying to unravel this mystery. Um, I didn't feel that same kind of, and obviously, like you mentioned, it's a very different type of horror, but it felt like he was like Donner's trying to build kind of suspense. Like, is Damien really doing this on purpose? Is it all just coincidence? But none of that played as well for me. And maybe part of that is this movie, especially like in the mansion, I think is almost overly lit at places. Um, but yeah, I mean, this I don't know. This wasn't terrible. I liked it, but it was also a huge step down from The Exorcist.
it's definitely a mixed thing for me. I really like it. I like the characters' performances. I think it is a very strong beginning, especially when we get into like the first inciting incident of something is really wrong when, the nanny hangs herself from. I've always wondered where that scene comes from, and now I know where it comes from, where essentially she says, Damien, you, it's all for you. And yeah, I think that scene is shot very well, and I think it's very well
That
handled.
scene's great, yeah.
And
I
then we
think that
get
scene is
some
good, but
dry
I think it
spots.
comes too early in the movie
Well, I don't know.
because, at least for me, and maybe, and admittedly, I can't separate what I already knew about this movie. Oh, we're going on a trip again.
Sorry, I'm dog sitting and my bag was in front of his toys.
Oh,
So
Aw.
I love
he
dogs.
was scratching at the
Yeah.
chair over here.
Yeah, speaking of dogs, the use of a
Sorry.
black dog as an omen in of itself is actually a very old thing in folklore. So
Yeah.
I wondered
I
if that
like that
was like
this
a
sort of
hellhound thing. Because obviously I don't know enough about this
yeah,
kind of stuff, but
there's an omen of like a black dog being like a symbol of like impending doom in
Mhm.
in some cultures and whatnot. Sailors would have had a thing about that sometimes. But
But anyway, sorry to interrupt, Milton, just real quick because I don't want to
sorry.
lose the thought. No, you're good, Austin. I would have put the nanny scene later because, or not had her say anything. I don't know if this is just me not able to separate what I already knew about this movie because obviously this is also a very that scene especially is very iconic. But you have somebody kill themselves and say that it's all for Damien. I'm instantly going to be aware. Oh, something bad is happening.
well,
So I
Well, it's
wondered
also
if it.
his birthday, so and like I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah.
So like if you're gonna have her kill herself, maybe remove that line and leave it ambiguous. Like, did she plan this? Was it a coincidence? Is this kid evil?
Well,
Like, leave it a little more vague.
you see, I have a feeling in some ways that the film doesn't actually want it to be vague. That is instead making a sort of theme of like this character is denying the omens that he sees because he wants to live comfortably. Because I
Hmm.
think the movie is trying to make it obvious, especially from the start, that there is something wrong here, that there's something very unnatural going on. Because we constantly see homages before then of some stuff just being wrong with Damien. I think the film wants rather than us catching up with the protagonist, it wants the protagonist to catch up with what we understand. All the while we're telling Gregory Peck, you gotta take care of this. You gotta accept Christ into your life or something like that for protection against Satan. You gotta kill the Antichrist. And, you know, spoilers, he doesn't. He gets shot because he just didn't regard the telltale signs, what was
I mean,
going
they
on.
made 4 of these and he didn't listen.
Well, point being, I think this movie telegraphs that sort of thing on purpose and doesn't really. It's not the suspense of us figuring out the mystery. It's the suspense of when the character will get up the nerve to do something. Which, matter of taste. I don't know if I like that exactly, but
Yeah,
but it's well delivered. So, despite the fact that it's a concept I don't exactly like a whole lot in terms of pacing, it's still Gregory Peck. So,
yeah, and some of this obviously with this movie is more down to taste. Because part of the problem, at least for me, is if you already tell me what's going on and then I have to wait for the character to figure it out, I don't think that's as interesting as it would be if you're figuring it out with the protagonist. Because I'm just like, yeah, you're just realizing shit I've known since like 20 minutes ago. We're getting so many tours of Austin's house.
Yes,
I'm
right.
honored.
apparently.
Milton's like, I'm gonna kill him.
He's barking somewhere. I don't know where he went.
It's an omen, Austin. Don't search after him.
But I did quite enjoy Gregory Peck's performance. This is the first thing I've really seen him in.
Really?
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
actually be surprised if that's true. You've never seen like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or like West by or North by Northeast, sorry. Or he's
North
in a
by
lot of
Northwest.
movies. To Kill a Mockingbird? No.
'Cause I hated the book. Um,
Well, he's in a lot of classic movies. This
well,
is
and
just
keep in
one of
mind,
them.
I'm not a classic movie person. Well,
Hey,
depending
stop
on how
saying.
you define classics, because
Hey,
obviously I like classics of a certain genre, but
Anyway,
stuff like
sorry,
To
Austin.
Kill a Mockingbird and stuff I've never seen. But
Anyways,
I was quite impressed with his performance here. I think he does a good job at being like kind of a man of and power thrust into a situation where he has no power. Richard Donner, I have to give him credit because I think he did a wonderful job with the directing. There's certain shots that I think are really good. Although the shot where Damien's mom is falling, it does that like I don't know, like almost kind of like a spin and zoom thing, and that made me laugh more than anything. So maybe I'm just a cynical bastard, but so Austin, now that you've finished giving us tours of your house, what do you think overall of The Omen?
so I watched this movie for the first time when I was like uh 13, and it like scared the hell out of me. I was like, oh my god,
Really?
like yeah, this movie's awesome. And I was super excited to rewatch it. And through parts of it, I was like, yeah, like I 100% get it. The other parts I was a little like, eh. But it was also I watched it at 7 in the morning, and we stopped talking, and I went to bed at 3:30 in the morning. So I don't know how much of that was the movie, and how much of that was me.
uh,
um, but no, I don't know. I really enjoyed watching it this time, to be honest.
Okay.
I really like certain concepts too. Like I like I don't entirely understand why it happens. It's just kind of like a thing you just accept. But the camera motif, where the character takes pictures of things and you can see how people dies through them.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all, but I was like, okay, sure.
there's a whole thing about I forget which culture it was in, but the idea of that a person's soul can be caught through camera, or sometimes even trapped inside of the camera.
That was like a
So,
big thing early with cameras. Yeah.
yeah, it was in more like quote unquote primitive cultures or ones that didn't have that sort of thing. But yeah, there's a whole thing of like a picture kind of like freezes a moment in time, and you're able to see more clearly in hindsight in some ways. So I think it's dealing with that theme in a little bit. Uh, I think it's cool.
hmm
I like
Yeah. No,
that.
it's really cool. Exactly. Yeah.
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 I really liked all the performances in this movie. I really like the nanny. I think she's really creepy. Especially we do a lot of like the shots of her eyes.
Or the governess. The governess, I think, is what the title. I forget her name. Who is it?
I quite enjoyed the nanny. I'm not sure how I feel about the mom, and it might just be like he's doing like a very of its time performance for that character. But I was
Hmm.
just like, hey, he's just
Billy
kind of
Whitelaw.
here, like. um,
That's
Yeah,
fair.
Billy Whitelaw is her name, and I think she actually
That's
puts in a great
racist.
performance. Yeah, um,
Hmm.
No, I
it
agree. The nanny was great, and she's got this like. At first, it's kind
Like
of like innocent
1,000 yard
manipulation,
stare. Like,
yeah. Of course, for the moment there, I could realize something wasn't quite right because, like, wait, who called you? It's like, oh, well, they just phoned me and they told me to show up. Here are my references.
and
Close
I
the
like how
door,
she completely
Damien.
drops
I'm
that
here
she
to
wants to call
protect
the
you.
agency.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a sort of character thing of like these people are asleep in their lives. They want comfort. They don't want to acknowledge that something is wrong in their lives. It's in many ways it's like the idea of I imagine Hereditary probably has takes some inspiration from this as well, of people kind of being asleep while living in some ways, being very
yeah, and
unalert.
it's the idea that you kind of you paint over the negatives with positives, right? Like
Yep.
your baby dies. I'm not gonna tell my wife. I'm gonna take this baby. That this was our baby.
Yeah,
You know, and that kind of just that idea is, I think, very much that character throughout.
Yeah.
yeah. Obviously, Gregory Peck spends the first half of this movie in denial. Um, I think most of my issues with this movie is maybe the script itself. I would have focused more on like when he's in Rome because that's kind of the cool stuff. And there's just kind of scenes in the first half where it's just them at home and like it's supposed to be, I think maybe building tension or furthering. Oh, there's something wrong with Damien, but then Damien's not really in this enough because there's big chunks where I like where the hell is he? Like I forgot he was here for a minute.
For
Well, I
me,
guess
I
too.
well,
Sorry, go ahead.
actually no, Austin, you go ahead because
I
I'll
was
go
just gonna
on.
say, more than The Exorcist, this film has '70s pacing. I'd say.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's a
Uh,
Donner thing.
Yeah, for me personally, I actually go the opposite way that you do, John. I thought the stuff at home was more interesting. I was almost hoping that they were going to do something like The Shining did later, where we kind of focus in on the house because we get a tour of the mansion kind of like starting out like a little bit. I would have hoped they would have committed to it. The bright lighting would like eventually get like a bit darker. It did later in some portions, and we would eventually get some feeling of like claustrophobia as the things that happen around Damien slowly start to encroach upon the house. We get a I get a bit of that in a later video game that was made uh, like a few years back or something like that on PC, where you essentially play the events of the Omen through
I
this
was
character
telling
that
Austin
is
about that today.
yeah
I actually just picked that up on Steam for 99 cents. Um, so let's play coming soon? Question
yeah
mark.
I would say so. But yeah, that for me delivered on what I probably would have wanted from the Omen, like this gradual, not necessarily from Damien's perspective, but from Gregory Peck's perspective, just being almost trapped in this house because his wife is having issues, his son's having issues. You can't trust the governess, and it's slowly being revealed of how she's an evil person. Um, I don't know. I think this movie though definitely understands because they're dealing with the mystery of like where's the justification? Why are these priests acting this way? What do
Yeah.
the numbers mean, Mason? Yeah,
So I think you could remake this again. I know we tried in the mid 2000s, but like
yeah. 2006, I think.
Austin,
And
hear
it's
me out.
basically shot for shot.
Austin, hear me out though. Okay, Robert
Mm.
Eggers or Ari Hereditary
Ari
guy.
A
Aster.
rod.
Ari
Oh.
Aster.
Ari Arad. No, wait. God
Ari
damn it, Austin.
Aster.
Ari Aster. Ari Aster is The Omen, but it's not 3 hours long and set on a deserted island.
Well, you already just went away from what it would be.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the ambassador to the United Kingdom gets trapped on the Isle of Man, and
Well,
his
yeah, and
salvation.
it'll be a sequel to Midsummer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, both this and The Exorcist deal with kind of themes of religion, but from a different angle. I thought it was kind of funny when you first meet the priest, and he's just kind of like a babbling madman. Like,
He's not babbling though. What he says makes sense from like theological thing because it's like Gregory Peck is like not Christian. It's like if you save your household, you might be able to like get salvation and be safe. But
okay,
he,
but
he
if
ignores
you're
it.
if you're talking to a person who's not
That is
religious, you're
right, of
babbling.
course. I suppose.
Because I was like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I know what you're talking about because I know what the plot of this movie is. But I'm thinking from the protagonist's perspective. Well, no wonder you don't believe he doesn't believe you. You're babbling like an idiot. Um, that's the last time Milton will ever be on the show.
Although I do wonder, like with yeah, Gregory Peck doesn't invite this sort of thing because he adopts a child without asking where the child came from to
Yeah.
basically cover up for the miscarriage from his wife.
Well, and since we're on this
Yeah.
path, we might as well talk as well about what I would almost call the film's twist, but it's not made like a huge deal, or maybe it is by 70s standards. I'm a little, like I said, outside my wheelhouse here, but
It's pretty big, yeah.
the kid was murdered. It wasn't stillborn.
Right. I think it's like a thing of there's an idea of baptism in some ways. I think of like unholy baptism where it's like rebirth through death or something like that. And I think that's what was implied that in order for like saying to get into the body or something like that, you had to kill the original child or something.
I
I'm not sure. The film doesn't make it very clear what
I
exactly
think
happened.
you way overthought it, my dude. They just killed the kid so that they would take the right kid.
I also think it maybe doesn't play like as big of a twist because it is like it immediately follows oh my god, his mother was a jackal.
I must have missed something in the funeral. I think it was like the pacing beforehand just was felt a little slow to me, but yeah, it's not that it didn't feel that much of a twist because I feel like I could see a lot of this coming from a mile away. So
See, I was surprised, but that's just because the film didn't give me any reason to think it was anything other than a stillbirth. Um, and then of course you get the revelation and the little baby skeleton with a big old hole in its head, and I'm like, they did that in the hospital. What'd they do with all the blood? Because the hole in that thing's head was pretty big. Like there'd be like blood and brains and
Well, they put it in a garbage bag and then went like off of a table corner.
oh my god!
Don't laugh at that. That's
no, it's
You
horrible.
horrible.
said
No,
it.
no, it's an awful thing, and
Yeah, in all
I
seriousness, it's a
would prefer
very
you use
adult
such a dark
material.
joke. TheDayGhost.
That wasn't a
Uh,
joke. I don't know why you guys were laughing. That was very dark of you guys.
God damn it, Austin. Oh,
Uh,
Bunch of sick fucks over here.
oh man.
uh,
Oh, we got to mention the score. Complete opposite of The Exorcist, where The Exorcist is a very, like Austin had mentioned, very 70s. I got a very, Carpenter feel from it. This is a very, like, epic, for lack of
like
a better term, score.
Like
orchestral, I
operatic.
suppose, in some ways.
Even if sometimes the movie, I don't know, quite deserves that epic of a score, but man, am I glad they went all out for it.
The theme is wonderfully horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish it would have been quieter in certain scenes, but I think the orchestral soundtrack I think is a pretty cool mix, especially as you said for the theme. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is something else we didn't really mention, and The Exorcist, but the theme of that movie is like a 30-second like piece of a song that they play in it, as opposed to this, which actually has a theme like that plays over the intro.
Yeah.
That's another thing that feels more 70s is we get a full like opening credits.
So what this movie kind of ends on, I would say this is one of those movies, where it's not really a happy ending. I've heard The Omen 2 is decent. Like it's obviously a step down from this one. Do you guys think they should have made a sequel and like further explored Damien's psychology?
No.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think just having it be open-ended adds to the horror element of this movie. If you try to flesh things out later, it's the original conceit of it is that Gregory Peck is denying the omens that he sees. Beyond this point, it's like, what can you do but the same thing all over again with a new character? And I don't know if the whole retread of themes is like an effective way to go about telling the story. I
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy in that they've, try to stop Damien from getting political power, which is, the big thing that he is going to get or like that he wants, and they end up giving it to him.
Yeah, because he's in the company of the president of the United States at the end. Um, Honestly, seeing it from Damien's perspective, I don't think it's effective because Damien should seem alien and otherworldly, and trying to explain that I think detracts from the mystery in some ways.
But I think that's what works about him not like really being like as much of a character is that he is more kind of like out like alien and otherworldly.
Don't worry, guys. Soon we'll be doing The Exorcist 2 and The Omen 2.
Good luck, fellas.
One day we will, I imagine.
No,
It's like
Austin and I have
it's
plans for shit like that.
it's like a double whammy of disappointment.
No, disappointment is The Omen 3. Sam Neill's in it and he couldn't save that movie.
Right, his best, I imagine.
But all right, Austin, final thoughts. Unless there's anything else we should bring up.
Now, what did you guys think of like the kills in this movie?
Oh, yeah,
The beheading one made me laugh because it's so bloodless.
yeah, it's like the practical effects of that thing. And what? How much spaghetti sauce chunks do you want flying up?
I
I don't
want
know.
all the spaghetti chunks. Okay, like
That
you
would have
This
just
been
is a
beheaded.
70s, this 70s movie, no blood.
that would have been cool,
Have
but
you
it would
seen
have
Dawn
been
of the Dead?
yeah.
No.
If those scenes, especially like the impalement scene of the spear coming in the priest's body, I love these kills. If they had put blood in it, this movie probably would have never been released, and different
Would
ratings
have been
boards,
like
and
that
the
shit.
United Kingdom would have banned it in several counties again, like they did in The Exorcist, because this was still in the era where a lot of groups were up in arms about
This is
violence
what
in movies.
76.
Yeah, no, this was still in the time of that
Yeah.
uprisal.
I mean, the kills are fine. Like I'm just kind of joking about the blood. It's whatever. It's just kind of funny watching somebody get beheaded and there's no blood.
No, very true. It's a fair point concerning
Mhm.
you know practical
Um,
props of the scene.
I think it's interesting that at least a couple of them, like the journalist, are almost like Austin mentioned, with Damien rising to power. Uh,
Self-fulfilling prophecies.
yeah,
The journalist one like is one of the big things that like scared me as a kid. It was just because like you knew it was coming the whole time and there was no stopping it. It was just like that idea. When you're 13, it's like,
yeah. I
oh my
mean,
god.
I grew up watching the Final Destination movies, and that the idea of those scared me.
I actually thought about that today. If you would have that kind of thought with this, because that death specifically is very
Final Destination,
Final Destination. Yeah.
which I can't wait to cover those. I love those films, no matter how bad they get. Have you seen all of those?
I have seen 2, 3, and 5. I saw 5 in the theater.
Okay. So
I've
you've seen two of the
seen,
best ones. 2 and 3 are 1, 2, and 3 are the best ones.
yeah, and I've seen none of them. That's right. Yeah, I've seen none of them. Yeah.
Shocking. But 3 is the first movie I saw
I'm
Mary
sure that's
Elizabeth
shocking.
Winstead in. Because I saw that in theaters. And I still remember the tanning bed death because that shit's like brutal. But anyway, um, yeah, so pretty good movie. I think it's a major step down from The Exorcist, but it's still it's decent. Um,
Yeah, watching them the order you did, I think definitely hurt. I actually had that thought when you told me we were watching The Exorcist first, but by that point you were already like half an hour in, so I wasn't gonna be like, yeah, you should probably maybe
watch the other.
watch The Omen first.
Yeah, I might revisit The Omen this Halloween, like separate of The Exorcist, and see if it holds up. Follow us on Instagram. The link is down in the description below. I post horror movie reviews from Letterboxd on there. And if I
Yeah,
rewatch The Omen,
smash that like button.
smash that
Subscribe
subscribe button. Um, but I post horror movie reviews on Instagram when I am watching something I'm not going to review for the channel. And I will put, or if it's something I'm rewatching, so I will put an Omen review on Instagram this October if I go back through it. If it's streaming by then, because I ain't paying for this shit again.
Well, it was streaming here, so
Oh, fuck you, Canada.
which is another
I
thing.
I
This
saw The
movie,
Omen through YouTube. It had a free version right there, just available for free.
Thanks for saying something, asshole.
You didn't ask me, so
so this film is of course a 20th Century Fox film. So
Oh, it is.
so when are we gonna get the Jacob Tremblay starring Disney Plus original remake?
Dude, why isn't it on Hulu yet then?
I'm not sure. It's on Disney Plus here. That's how I watched it.
You
That and the
backers.
remake.
I need a VPN. Austin, watch the remake for us and tell us how it is.
So as a kid, I remember seeing the trailer for the remake a lot. And now I know that it's basically shot for shot. But the only thing that stuck with me from the trailer was like the most cliched horror thing ever where the mom like closes the window and it's like a giant horse demon face in the mirror next door.
See, the only thing I
It's like,
remember
Dad.
is I was a teenager. I was early teenager, early teens when that came out. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. They're releasing a horror movie on 6606. I gotta go see that. And then
Well,
I
and
just saw it on DVD one day.
that's the big thing. Like a producer somewhere was like, 666 is coming up. We need to make a movie quick. Remake The Omen. We don't have much time left.
Dude, say what you will about that movie. That is marketing genius.
we're gonna
Like,
have all of our
Of
fans
course.
print 666 on their foreheads and
oh,
cut their hair in a weird way.
We're gonna put chemicals in the water that turn the frickin' frags into 666s.
It'll turn them into Satanists.
so anyway, Austin, what is your
I want
final
to see
score?
that remake where instead of dogs, it's frogs.
Actually, Fox
What is your
actually had
final score for The Omen?
I'm gonna give it a 4. I feel like I'm higher than you guys are, but
I'm gonna
whatever.
give this a 3 out of 5. It is definitely an above average movie. I feel like I'd be doing it a dishonor giving it anything lower than that. Um, Richard Donner, I think, Richard Donner does a really good job at making some scenes better than others, but overall, I think the script is lacking in some areas, and there's some weird choices
Mhm.
here and there for me personally. But yeah, as a my first time watching it, it's pretty good.
Yeah, for me, I say 3.5. I kind of fall in the middle, recognizing both reasons. Gregory Peck is just one of my favorite actors. Watch more movies with him. I think his
No,
performance sells quite a bit of it. I think there are dry spots definitely in some of the script writing that could have helped. Could have been helped a bit. As always with tightening the pacing. Um, but yeah, no, I enjoyed it.
A thing we mentioned, or at least like I mentioned with The Exorcist, is that balance between William Friedberg and William Peter Blatty. This film's missing that. Like, it's just you have a really great director,
Some guy.
Yeah, but funny thing that you should mention frogs as a thing, as an omen of sorts of portending doom, because I
Oh,
was reading
because
through Hellboy, Seed of Destruction, in which the author kind of describes in African Tales that frogs can sometimes portend doom. Why am I
frogs are
talking
Which
about this, John?
frogs are a
you
big
beat
part of
me.
that storyline.
You beat me to it. Tomorrow, Sunday, July 18th at 7 p.m. Milton Man Thing, TheDayGhost, and I will be reviewing Hellboy: Seed of Destruction, the first arc. Oh, and Austin's gonna get the book for me because I meant to grab it. Yeah, there it
Nice.
is.
Woo!
We may be joined by our friend Doolittle, who you will remember from the Nightmare on Elm Street review. Look at that art.
Just look at all the beauty in that miniseries.
Look
And
at all
then
the beans.
and then
Monty Python.
yeah. So I hope to see you guys there. It'll be our first comic review. We've got a few, I think, in the queue. Milton and I have talked about doing some Buffy comics and some Walking Dead comics. And then potentially next Sunday, because I just keep announcing things, I'm taking a page out of Austin's book. If Austin is free, we might do we might start some Evil Dead Regeneration because I've been wanting to show him that game. And Milton, you're of course welcome, but that's one I specifically want Austin there for because it's Evil Dead,
Sure.
and he's
Groovy.
the biggest Evil Dead fan I know besides myself. Um, but yeah, that was The Exorcist and The Omen. Good choices, Austin. And like I said, it's always good to have you on, somebody to actually bounce jokes off of besides this brick wall over here.
No, I'm just laconic. Come on.
You're what?
The thing that Oz said in one season of Angel, I think it was like the second episode, doesn't talk a whole lot sometimes, muted expression, that sort of thing.
Oh, speaking of Angel, I have something to tell Austin later. I don't want to spoil it for you, but because
Yeah.
The Exorcist reminded me of an episode of Angel.
Uh,
Um,
well, for later, in any case.
but
The Exorcist also clearly inspired an episode of the Lou Ferrigno Hulk that I did a commentary
oh,
on Deep
okay, interesting.
Pollution.
Oh, weird. I haven't seen any of that show.
It's basically they do the reverse, but it's like a adult woman that's speaking like they dub like a little girl's voice over, and there's definitely some Exorcist inspiration there.
Yeah, but The
Okay.
Exorcist has inspired a few things and
Of
all
course,
around.
a few genres.
Psych, the show Psych, has an episode just dedicated to remembering The Exorcist and like other possession movies and whatnot. So
My favorite band, I've told Austin about them a few times. Ice Nine Kills has a song based on The Exorcist, but it's the novel rather than the film. And they did like a music video tribute and everything. I'll send it to you, Austin. You won't. I don't think you'll appreciate the song, but you might appreciate the video itself because they make like videos that are like a love letter to the. But anyway, we'll talk
Nice.
about that here in a minute. Thank you guys for hanging out. We appreciate it. I'm probably gonna cut some of this stuff off at the end, but I might not because it's like the end. Who cares? Um, Final thing to say before we go, next week will be Fear Street Part 3, which I have already watched, but I will be watching again, and Psycho Gorman. Austin, we'd love to have you there. I know it'll be kind of a commitment because you'll have to watch like 4 movies instead of just the 2. Um,
Oh yeah, I still gotta watch all the Fear Streets. Yeah,
yeah.
I really want to check those out, and Psycho Gorman though.
or
So
just watch
Yeah.
Psycho Gorman.
Well,
But
he's got
crap
to
a
watch
whale horn.
Part 3 of Fear Street, but you got to watch the first 2 parts to watch Fear Street Part 3. But yeah, Austin, like I said, we'd love to have you there. And then after that, we will be doing Evil Dead and Sinister, right?
yes,
Yes. Because I'm an idiot and keep getting it mixed up with Insidious. I don't know, all those like late 2000s, early 2010.
Sinister.
Yeah. And we will have a special guest star for that. So that's our next 2 weeks. I'm really excited. Get to talk some Evil Dead with Austin finally. I can't believe we're at 25 episodes, Austin, and we're just now getting to Evil Dead.
Pretty cool.
But yeah, I will talk at you guys. We'll talk at you guys later.
Thanks for watching, everyone.